Hey, what's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today, you and I are going to be having a discussion on how overpowered Bitwig is when it comes into drum design, especially with the latest tools that it has released lately. Now, I will open this up and say, like, just as a wish list thing, I do wish that Bitwig had a more dedicated device for OTT. But aside from that, I'm going to be showing you some crazy tools today that will just kind of like hopefully open your mind with how insane this is getting ready to get. Cool. So subscribe, maybe like the video if that seems interesting. Actually, wait till the end of the video, and then if you're happy with it, then like the video. But what do we have here? This is actually the first engine for hi-hats that Bitwig had since I can't even remember which version. This in itself is actually pretty robust. There is comb filtering and FM modulation that you can do in order to change the timbre of these hats. Change the decay. So even just messing with this, there's a lot of stuff that you can get. And the recent update, they came out with a lot of different engines that are based off of other, synths or whatever. For example, the V8 is an 808 hat, the V9 is a 909, and the V0 is some kind of physical modeling thing. I don't know what that's based off of, but it sounds great. But now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different engines. Cool. Now, what happens if we take this and we utilize Bitwig's stuff in order to, I don't know, get something random every time? For example, something like this. If I set a random modulator on every single one of these parameters, and I turn this on, well, now, as you can see, every time I hit a button, it's going to give me a different hi-hat sound. Be mindful of this one. This is the only one that does this, but sometimes with the comb stuff, it can get really crazy, so please just be aware. Huh, okay, well that's cool. Well, hold on. What would happen if I did this with the, I don't know, with the V9 hat, or the crash, or whatever? So if we go into the hat closed, oh wait, this is here too. Same thing with the V8, same thing with the V0, same thing with the other stuff. Okay, cool. Well, what happens if we do something like this? Where we have an instrument selector just from grouping all of these. And now if you look at this, every single one of these has a randomizer on it. We have a selector over here to randomize this. We can change the index if we want to. And then this is just the random mod in order to change that. But if I set the amount to this and I turn this on, now every time I hit a button, I'm going to get something that's not only randomized from each engine, but also the parameters themselves are going to be randomized. Sweet. So if I have something like rolling sampler and I'm just recording in general, look at all these hats that I've just created. Now, I do have some processing on the outside of this, which I will talk about in a different video. But essentially what I've done is just created a suite of different hi-hats that I can utilize to build my drums around. If you introduce some physical modeling like convolution reverb, some comb filtering, etc., then you can make them sound more realistic. But there is so much diversity in what I just created that a lot of people spend a lot of money on sample packs for, right? Because how many times are people looking just for a clean 808 hat or a clean 909 hat or whatever? So if you have no means of, sound design or whatever, and to put a random mod on one of these parameters, what I do is I set this to rate of 0 and then set the note to retrigger and then just apply this to every single knob on here except for these two. Then it's kind of like, oh, wow, wait, what's going on here? And you could do this with any of the drum sounds, but I typically stick with the hats just because it's more like high-end noise energy and it's a lot more malleable. You can get away with it where you're doing like kicks and snares and whatever. It kind of needs to be there needs to be a little bit more care going into that stuff, unless if you're just going for percussion in general. Speaking of percussion, what happens if I were to do something like this? And we're going to use multipass for this. I'll show you a different one that I have in Bitwig, but if I type in my favorite thing, which is pork figuratively. I don't actually like pork that much, but this is a percussion maker, something kind of like this. And I send it, which every time I click this, it's going to use an audio follower to change something different and randomize that into another randomizer. And I start hitting buttons. What do we get? Oh, that was kind of like a kick. Okay, so now just from a couple of hits, we have something that's kind of reminiscent of a kick. We have a couple of these things that are kind of reminiscent of a clap, which I wonder if I were to layer this, something kind of like this, something kind of like this, and then take the tails off of these and just use the transient of them, which we'd have to kind of push that much closer. Maybe something kind of like that. Obviously, there's some low end in there, which I'm not going to spend too much on the sound design aspect of it, but just talking about how to manipulate these into actual drum sounds that you might be happy with. Okay, well, we've essentially created the beginning points of a kick and the beginning points of a snare. Add that to your suite of stuff that we've created here, and guess what? I've got a lot of different elements in which to create my entire drum kit off of. So you might be saying, hey, well, you kind of just cheated, right? Because you just used an outside multi or third party source. But the thing is that you can build this stuff inside of Bitwig as well. And if you're lazy or whatever, that's not supposed to be there. I'm sorry. Let me find another one. I do have these as presets that you can buy. I have this stuff for Bitwig, Ableton, whatever. But if you take, something that's a rack like this and you know how to build these percussive things, you start to get into this like crazy world of infinite percussion / drum design. And what the thing that's so cool about this is that it's not like you don't have to be so specific about it. I'm going to turn the threshold down a little bit to try to let this come through, but so now we're getting different stuff out of this. But the fact of the matter is that by randomization and by a little bit of volume shaping and I would even say transient shaping, we're getting into these different textures now to where you can take this a step further and be like, oh, well, that was cool. Now what do I do? Well, why don't we grab this rack again and toss this onto this with this stuff now, and then do it again, 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 and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. If you know that reference, leave me a comment in the YouTube section. It's an old video, but yeah, essentially you get into stuff that kind of just keeps building for you, and it makes drum creation a whole lot easier. The thing with me personally, like that I cannot stand doing, is look for a sound and be like, no, 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 no. I would rather just take the time to learn the sound design and then be like, what do I want? I want a snare that's like, and be like, okay, and then start working or using, some kind of random material and start shaping it or doing some kind of audio alchemy to get into the sounds that I actually want. It's not always perfect, but there's kind of that curveball of using random stuff and then trying to work on the in-between and problem solve your way through that. I'm a firm believer that you can turn any sound into any kind of sound. There's a caveat in there. I'll say that one more time for the people in the back. Any sound into any kind of sound, which I have videos on masterclasses. I've got a drum course on how to do that. But yeah, it's for another video. And if you're interested in the percussion side of things as well, I also have those kinds of videos around as well. You can just take these things that I've made in Faceplant or whatever and apply it to what we're doing here. Or of course, if you want more in-depth stuff, then there's that. But yeah, essentially this has become so much more helpful and so much easier to get access to this kind of stuff, even without any processing. So in my opinion, you know, I sell sample packs, blah, 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 all that other stuff, but just with a little bit of empowerment, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of intuition, you in theory might not ever have to make another hi-hat, or sorry, might not have to buy another sample pack again just for hi-hats or something of the sort. Fair? So in any case, thank you all so much. I know that I had a couple advertisements through the video. I promise this will be the last mention of it because we're at the end, but alckemy.com, I have access to all the racks that I've shown you for both Bitwig, Ableton, and Faceplant. Or you can book a lesson with me and I can go more in depth with this stuff on how to utilize this. And for anybody who's an ARCANUM member, I will post this rack in the Discord so that way you can just go download it and not have to worry about it. I get it. Not everybody wants to, you know, spend their life doing sound design and stuff, but that's why I have a job, is to hopefully help the people out that just want to focus on making music and not nerd out about dumb stuff like this. In any case, if nothing else, I would love it so much if you could like the video, consider subscribing to the channel, leave me a friendly comment or ask me a question because that's what I do. Yeah, that's what we do here. In any case, thank you all so much. I'll see you in the next video.